Hey there, welcome to the channel. So today I want to talk about a few things, just look at some stocks and then want to talk about the emergency declaration from the White House and some other related items to energy. All right, so the SPY was up a little bit today, really no big deal in the big scheme of things. So, that's what we see there. If we look at the Qs, once again, up a little bit as well, but no real big deal as far as I can see. I want to look at energy really quick. USO, another down day. So really oil's kind of getting the butt kicked out of it right now. UNG, look, big down day on UNG. Kind of interesting how they're getting hit, even though supplies to Europe are getting kind of cut right now. So let's switch over to energy. So a couple of things. One, this is what's being reported. Germany's biggest utilities are working to revive their coal operations as Europe's biggest economy turns to dirtier fuel to bid a reduce of the natural gas. So what's happening is the natural gas is being restricted into the Nord Stream 1 pipeline by Russia. Whatever the reasons they're doing that, I don't know. They say it's about maintenance. Other people say it's about whatever. But the net effect is that, you have Europe, big parts of Europe like need natural gas. And they need it because it's really the only energy solution at this time for heating your homes, electricity generation, and stuff like that. I mean, and it's interesting too, because when you look at the energy density, I did a video where I talked about that, why green energy won't work. And the energy density of natural gas is actually higher than than actually nuclear, which is surprising, but that's what the data says. So okay, so now we're stepping way back. So you've had this green movement. And look, I'm just going to bitch and complain about the green movement for a little bit, because it's this incompetence that is really a huge problem, a huge problem. So we're going to complain about that. But first, let's look at this. The White House has given this emergency. They have declared a emergency and authorization for temp extensions of time and duty-free importation of solar cells. Okay, so they're declaring an emergency, and basically what they're doing is they're saying, hey, we're going to suspend for up to 2 years import duties on solar cells. Okay, and they specifically call out the nations, et cetera, et cetera. So is this going to help anything? Of course not. This is just nonsense. This is this political pandering. Solar panels don't replace natural gas really in any way, in any substantive way at all. They just don't. The energy density is so low, it just doesn't matter. And doing it now, it's not like at the end of this 2-year period you're magically going to have this green utopia. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work at all. The only thing that you can do, as I pointed out before, was molten salt reactors. You got to switch over to nuclear. And the reason is energy density. The simple fact is that we know enough about physics to know that the strong nuclear force, it's a close acting force as compared to things like the magnetic force, right? The electromagnetic force, like our Earth's magnetic field. That's a very long range force, but it's very weak. And then you have there's other forces out there as well in physics, and but the strong nuclear force is, that's the one that we know about. It's very strong. There's orders of magnitude stronger than the other forces. So hence, when you split the atom, which we are splitting, you're not just ripping off like electrons that are spinning around. That's done all the time. That's just chemical reactions and stuff. But we're talking actually splitting the atom or fusing atoms together. That's dealing with the nucleotides inside the atom. Doing that leads to orders of magnitude more energy being able to release. So it's really the only solution for clean energy at this point. Now, if you were going to make Fukushima type reactors, I would certainly be questioning that. But let's go back to discuss this from the beginning. See, what's going on? What's going on is we've had this kind of green movement, and now we have this ESG movement, environmental responsible, whatever, investing. And the fundamental issue is that people want to believe that, we can just run on green energy and that there's no cost for it. Okay. And they want to believe that all you have to do is just follow what AOC wants to do, pass, a $5 trillion spending plan, and then magically it's going to solve all our problems. Well, no, that's not realistic. We have a fundamental problem in the West right now. And the problem is that the leaders that we are electing are not serious people. They're just not serious people. They are professional politicians that have done nothing with their whole lives except be politicians. And most, if not all of them, are actually poor politicians, and meaning that they haven't actually followed through on doing anything. So therefore, they actually don't know anything about doing anything other than campaigning, where you make promises that you can't meet, you make promises that are unrealistic. And it doesn't matter. You just kind of talk your way out of it to make it look like you did do something when in fact you didn't. But the problem is, you're running massive economies. And Germany is in a particular bad spot. Germany is in a very bad spot. They are the intake for a lot of that natural gas coming from Russia. They have the Nord Stream 1. Nord Stream 2 was built right next to it. Why were they doing that? Because they need more natural gas. Now, why are they doing that? They're doing it because, this green movement in Europe is like, well, we got to get rid of fossil fuels. So, okay, so how did you get rid of fossil fuels? Well, you didn't. You didn't. It's a just BS. You didn't. All you did is you outsourced it to Russia. So Russia produced the natural gas. You don't produce it anymore. You haven't actually reduced your carbon footprint in any way at all. So think about it. So now Germany is going to jump back. They are going to go back to coal, which is very dirty compared to natural gas. And they're going to do it. Why? Oh, because Russia's bad because of this whole Ukraine invasion thing. Instead of negotiating to some reasonable end to this horrible conflict that both sides can live with, we just have this constant pushing these narratives that don't solve any problem. And the result is that Germany's in big trouble. Their industry, Germany is, they're one of the economic powerhouses of the EU. I mean, they still have, serious industry and stuff like that. They haven't deindustrialized like many other parts of Europe have, and like parts of the US have. They still have this manufacturing, and a lot of it is to the way they kind of run their country, and the way they treat their new employees. Like, people graduate from school, and there's all these mentoring programs and kind of training programs for people to become professional, whatever it is, all the skills that you need to actually do manufacturing and do high-tech manufacturing and all that stuff. So they have this, and so they have this powerful thing. But the problem is you need energy for that. And so what's happening? Their leaders are like, well, we don't like Russia. We got to get out of the Russia stuff. And now you've taken the relationship with Russia and you've made it so bad that, like, maybe Russia doesn't even want to like sell you gas, even if you would take it at this point. And so what's the result? The result is, I mean, you're talking about, you're going to shut down entire industries in Germany, which is the major economy inside of the EU. You're talking about a Great Depression inside the EU. And not to mention all the crap going on in the US. I mean, the US were a little better off, but not much better off. So here's the big lie of the whole green energy thing. The lie is that we need to use renewable fuels, and we can do that, and we can replace fossil fuels. And the second part of the lie is that we need to make this movement now. The only way to do it is to demonize fossil fuels, tax them, outlaw them, ban them, and get rid of the fossil fuel. And then, because when we do that, magically, like pixie fairy dust, we're magically going to have all the solar wind power that we need to supply our economy. Well, no, that didn't happen. First of all, you never actually did anything to reduce your dependence on fossil fuels. You never did. You just outsourced it to another country that may, in fact, be doing things in a less environmentally friendly way. I don't know how well controlled the fracking, the natural gas oil wells are in terms of how well they protect the environment in Russia as compared to Louisiana or Texas. I've been involved in those projects, and I can tell you there's a lot of approvals and stuff like that, and plugging the abandoning and et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of, as there should be, because you don't want to obviously contaminate water supply. So there's a lot of rules and regulations now. Is Russia doing that? I don't know. So now you've taken, instead of reducing your demand for fossil fuels, you did nothing. You literally did nothing. Anything that you did, any of these small, like wind projects, tide projects, solar projects, it just doesn't even cover a fraction of the energy that you need. And there's this myth that, well, we can conserve and then we can build and blah, 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 and it's fine. And it just has not worked, and it doesn't work. And this should be the wake-up call. The fact that Germany is preparing to fire up their coal plant. So think about it. Is environmentally, what should Germany do? If you care about the environment, what is the thing that you should do? You should go meet with Putin, shake hands, come up with a resolution, fire up Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, because that natural gas is going to be cleaner, put less carbon in the atmosphere than the coal Germany's going to fire up. Now, you can go out there and say, hey, Germany should not do that, should not fire up. Well, when people are freezing to death come this winter, when people are starving, which is going to start happening this winter as well, all of a sudden, all that stuff is out the window. It's just out the window. So this comes down to really serious things. Now, in Europe as well, they have demonized what? Nuclear energy. Now, nuclear energy has lots of problems. However, there are solutions to that. There are ways to better build nuclear power in a much safer manner. Nothing is perfect. But if we had spent the last 20 years, if we had just looked at basic physics and we look at it and say the energy density of solar, wind is so low that there's no way it can replace our current energy sources. There's no way it can replace that. And then we actually just use science, actual science, and look for a solution, you would end up at something like a molten salt reactor. That's where you would be, because the physics would lead you there. It's a very interesting thing in engineering. You can work at a company and there's other companies working on the same project, and they're all trying to solve the same problem. And you will be surprised that very often there is some variation. There is some creativity, like, oh, this company came up with a different idea. Oh, that's interesting. And it has its benefits and it's got its downsides. And the other company will come up with a different idea, but very much a big chunk of what it is, they come to the same conclusion, and they come very close to doing things in the same way. And the reason is really because of the underlying physics that we're dealing with as an electrical engineer doing electronics. That's what it is. It's physics. It's the physics of the transistors that we can make and how fast you can move the signals around, et cetera, et cetera. So look, there's a bigger issue than this. There's a much, much bigger issue than the fact that, hey, Germany's going to fire up the coal plants. It's a competency issue. We have to start electing competent leaders that can actually understand this stuff, and think for a moment how complicated it is. It is very complicated. Being the president of the United States, you are the leader of a system of systems. Go to the international level. You're a leader of system of systems. And with these, you always have the unintended consequences of blindly turning knobs at will and not understanding the effect. And in addition to the fact that you have leaders that literally could not comprehend how to blow their nose, much less understand the complications of trying to switch from fossil fuels to green energy, we have a much bigger problem than just a simple energy emergency. That's it for this one. Talk to you later. Bye.